Welcome, Kellogg community. I'm Michaela Doyle with the Kellogg School of Management. Thank you for joining us today for Conversations with Kellogg Leaders featuring Tom Wilson. In this webinar series, Dean Corneli speaks with Kellogg alumni leaders on timely issues and challenges facing the global business community. You can catch up on prior webinars in this series at our virtual events page on the Kellogg alumni website. We will put a link to that site into the chat now. Today's presentation will last 1 hour, and we invite you to submit questions for our speaker at any time using the Q&A icon that's located at the bottom of your screen. We will address audience questions throughout the conversation, and with that, I'm happy to welcome Dean Francesca Corneli.
Hello, everyone. So delighted to be here again in this wonderful speaker series showcasing our amazing alums, and I am so delighted to have another amazing speaker today in Tom Wilson, who is the Chair, President, and Chief Executive Officer of Allstate Corporation and Allstate Insurance Company. Everybody knows Allstate, and we are really looking forward to hear about his approach on how to lead a large organization, about his approach to purpose, and also how to use new technologies in his company. Now, I also want to say that Tom and Allstate have been incredibly supportive of Kellogg, and in particular also of the Center for Not-for-Profit. And the Allstate Foundation has really funded 3 programs that have been incredibly successful in promoting the not-for-profit sectors. And one of these programs just reached the 10 years anniversary. So thank you so much. Welcome, Tom, and thank you for being here.
It's good to be here, and thank you for the partnership. Like in that one, we just provide a little fuel and money, and you provide all the IP, and it's been great.
Well, I love the partnership. Yeah. Thank you. Now, as I mentioned before, you are a big advocate of purpose, and I want to start with that, really. Right? I know you launched an internal training program to help the Allstate leaders to find purpose. What were the steps you took? What were the benefits?
First, I'm a big believer in purpose, as you and I have talked about, both personal purpose and the company purpose. In this case, it was, so I've been CEO, it was almost 20 years ago. And I was just becoming the CEO, and I had been the president, and so we were kind of working on what I wanted to work on, and then I said, but I feel like we need some more energy here. Like we need to drive some change in our culture. So we went down to a place in Florida called the Human Performance Institute, and their goal was to help give you more energy in your life. That's what they said, and the way they got there was they help you figure out your personal purpose, and there's a bunch of steps you go through. And then you address sort of where you're at today, and then you figure out what's your plan to get better. And the idea is if you know what your purpose is and you got a plan, you'll have more energy. And it includes everything from your physical energy to relationships. So I took 11 people down there. One was excited. That was me, because I had been there. And everybody came back really excited because it was all about them. And they all had their own personal purpose. And I'm thinking, okay, we're getting there. We got a lot more energy so we can drive the kind of change we want. And as we did it, we started to realize, like, we were just 11. We needed some more people in the boat. So we decided to expand it to a group of our, at the time, officers who were 200 people. We said, well, we need them with us. So we took them through it, and they got it. And then we said, well, if we all know our individual purpose, what's the company's purpose? And we said, well, we should write that down. Just like we've written down our own, we should build a plan to get there. So that's really launched our shared purpose, which is how we do it for the whole organization. And since then, it's been really interesting because we then said, well, we can't just have 211 people on the boat. We got 55,000 employees. We need more people on the boat. And by the way, as part of our employee value proposition, sort of give to get, we've helped over 45,000 people find out their own purpose. So they went through the same program. We do it online because you can't afford to fly everybody to Florida. And then as we built out the company's purpose, we've been through a bunch of gyrations there. And I think what we've concluded in the end, Francesca, is that to be a purpose-driven company, you have to really be powered by purpose-driven people. And if your purpose is not really aligned with ours, then go someplace else. That's okay with us. So it's been quite a journey. It's been a lot of energy, the inspiration. We've learned a lot. We've made a bunch of mistakes along the way. But yeah, I'm all in on purpose.
I love that. And I always say that the reason why I love to interview Kellogg alums is because there's a common thread in cultures, and that part about purpose-driven people who then create the company is really something we hope to send out students that you can hire that are purpose-driven people. So.
I think my observation is that Kellogg has really grown along with the world on that. Like, so when I went here 45 years ago, we did some purpose, but it wasn't as much as you do today. And I think what you do today is fabulous.
I hope so. Thank you. And I know your daughter is also an alumna,
yes,
and your wife, so you're a very purple family.
Yeah, we're a purple family, for sure.
You've been seeing it over time. Now, coming back to purpose, you've also said that now talking about the purpose of a company, right? You've also said that the benefits of having a purpose-driven company is that you lead people to cooperate and clarity around decision. But as you mentioned, you have tens of thousands of employees. So how do you use really the purple framework to unite and help all these people?
Yeah, so the first is we write it down. And we're now on our, I'm going to call it third revision. It hasn't really changed that much, but we've tried to strip down the words, because the first time you do it, there's a lot of corporate speak in it. Everyone's got different opinions, so the word is but now we're okay, we've got 3 values, we've got 4 behaviors, we have 4 operating practices, and we have 4 people we take care of. So it's our customers, our shareholders, our employees, and communities. And so we kind of really started to boil it down. So you have to keep working. And so the other piece is then you talk about it all the time. So every conversation I have, I'm talking about our shared purpose. And people probably get sick of it. Sometimes you get sick of saying it, but you have to do it and keep it in front of people. The other thing we did, which I didn't know when we started, I've learned it over time by having confusion on what is your purpose. So our purpose is to help empower people with protection so they can achieve their hopes and dreams. That's a pretty big statement.
Yeah.
Sounds great, but I could probably sell health insurance. We don't. I could probably sell, scooters. I don't know that I could sell a bunch of stuff. And so what we've done is built out a series, we call it middleware, to go from that purpose down to day-to-day activity. And so I call it strategic middleware. So you got the purpose, and then you're just think of middleware. What would be an example? In your iPad, there's a keyboard, and then there's a processor in there that does zeros and ones. Think of the zeros and ones as day-to-day activity. Think of the keyboard as your brain and your purpose. There's a bunch of software in there that takes those ideas and turns it into zeros and ones and spits back. So what we've done is build out a series of what we call strategic middleware. So we have our purpose, we have our strategy, which is to grow property, liability, market share, and expand protection. Under that, we have transformative growth. Under that, we have an employee value proposition. And so you just keep boiling it down with as simple and fewer words as you can. And you create it so that when it comes down to, at the end, in the zeros and ones, we're just having this conversation about employability with our employees. Can't guarantee a job, but I can help you make sure you can get another job at the same or better money. That's kind of interesting if I'm an employee, as opposed to you're going to employ me for life. Well, if you follow up our strategic middleware, it says when you get skills from us, we're going to let you download it and put it onto a resume which says it's Allstate verified skills. So you can go get another job from another person if you want, because it came through that middleware. So I think that's the thing that I find, that it took me a while to bumble through that. So I would say to anybody who's trying to do purpose, whether it's your own personal purpose or it's a company purpose, just build out that middleware so that it just keeps down so you can figure out what you can do day to day.
That's amazing. And let me ask you one more thing about this, given that you're so thoughtful about it. Feedback. I know you're also very focused on feedback. What role do the feedback in acting on feedback plays in the purpose?
So we have 4 behaviors in our shared purpose.
Okay.
One is to collaborate. Of course, you'd want to work with other people, right?
Yes.
One is to challenge ideas, not challenge people, but challenge ideas. The third is decision clarity, because in a company our size, like a lot of times, if you have, particularly in this virtual world, you got to have decision clarity. Like when you're in a meeting, it's easier to have another meeting if you're on person, but if you're not and you're going, you got to have this. The fourth is feedback, and feedback is really help me be a better person. Mm-hmm. Help me be a better leader. So part of our behaviors is we're helping everybody else, and that's, we said, it has to be honest, it has to be direct, and it has to be independent of hierarchy. So and so you got to be willing to give me feedback so I can be better. And so we think that's important to being part of our employee value proposition. Rolling it up is we're going to help you have professional success. But if you don't get feedback, because I hate this. Like sometimes we have a bimodal workforce. Half the people work for us more than 10 years, half less than 10. Over 10 is probably average of 20. Below 10 is 3. So once you kind of get with our program, you stay around. I'm like, well, the person who's been here 20 years, is it fair to them to not have had feedback? And so a job comes up and they say, oh, how come I didn't get that job? And somebody else is like, you're not even on the list. Like and that's because they didn't get good feedback along the way. And I feel that's a responsibility of a leader and an organization. So we're big on feedback. Yeah.
So I love that approach, right, to purpose, motivate and bring people together. Now, about leading the organization, even with that, I mean, you must have possibility coming across your desk or so many initiatives, possibilities, driven by purpose, but how do you prioritize between all of them?
Well, it's complicated, right?
I'm sure.
Both as an institution, but as a person. Let me start with the person.
Yes.
So in my role, you feel like you're being sold every day. Like everybody in some meeting is trying to sell you on something. And by the way, I'm a seller. I'm selling them the proposition of Allstate. I'm selling our customers. So it's all marketing. So you feel like you're that person in New York, where they've got the 3 cups and you're trying to find the ball underneath it. So you feel like it's over there. So one of the things you have to do is be aware of like what people's motives are and why they're doing it. And so I try to and understand why are they making the pitch. It doesn't make them bad people. It means they believe it. Just like understand, try to empathize with them. Why are they making this pitch? The other thing we do though is you just make trade-offs. So we have, we got, let's just take customers and shareholders. Pandemic happens, used car prices go up by 60% in 18 months. Suddenly we got to raise our auto prices by 30 to 40%, auto insurance prices by 30 to 40%. And you're like, doesn't feel that customer friendly to me. And you're like, well, it's not. On the other hand, as shareholders, like I can't give their money away. So you're just constantly trying to balance between those. And I find you just have to use your judgment. You have to listen and try to understand why people are asking you to do what you're doing. But then I find that the biggest thing is treat people like adults, be transparent, and communicate to them. So say to our customers, like, I'm sorry your prices have to go up. I really am. But I'll tell you what, like, I can't do this because used car prices are worth so much more. If your car gets wrecked, I got to give you 30 grand, not 20 grand. They get it. But then you got to be honest and consistent. So in the beginning of the pandemic, nobody was driving, nobody was getting in accidents. Our costs go to the floor. So we gave $1 billion back to customers within 2 weeks. We gave them the first $600 million back because we said, and we didn't have to. Like we had a contract. They gave us some money, and I was like, yeah, but it's kind of like you go to a restaurant and you're having dinner, and then there's a fire alarm goes off. And you can't eat your dessert, and then you still get charged for your dessert. You're like, no, like I didn't drive my car. So I think you just have to be transparent, and then think longitudinally about being fair with people.
That's very interesting, and I see you're clearly inspiring people. I see already a lot of questions coming in. Let me pick one. It says, Walmart leverages integrative thinking. Sears and Walgreens primarily use siloed thinking. How would you describe the type of thinking used at Allstate?
Well, I'd like to say it's always integrated,
Yes.
but there are certainly silos. But I've come to a different place on silos. I think silos are the responsibility in the creation of leaders. Like, I don't think I have people out there saying, "Oh, I really don't want to work with marketing," or "I really don't want to work with this other area." Like,
Good point.
what we do as leaders is we set up organizations, and then most importantly, we set up metrics. So I'll give you an example that I was just talking to our head of marketing about yesterday, leads. So we buy hundreds of millions of dollars of leads to go find new customers. And the lead people, when they have leads they don't need, they resell them. They resell them to a competitor of another business we have that sells leads. And I'm like, well, why is that? And well, because I gave them a measure on lead effectiveness, where if they get a higher price for those leads by selling to somebody else, then their measures look better. That's my fault. That's not their fault. So I feel like in silos, as leaders, we always have to, and I try to, lean back and say, okay, what did I do to create this? And I think a lot of it is a science we call measurement science. Like, it's so easy. Like, we're very goal-driven as our company. You put a number out there, we'll go get the number. But then you're like, okay, well, how hard did you think about picking the number? What alternatives did you look at picking the number? What are the consequences of picking the wrong number? And I feel like to get rid of silos, leaders have to be better at measurement science, because people just do what you ask them to do.
I love that question. I see a lot of questions coming in, but before I go back to that, I want to ask you a little bit more also, but Allstate is an insurance company, and recent events from the fires in Southern California to the hurricanes in Florida, everybody is more and more painful aware of grateful, but painful in the sense of like seeing all this disaster, or the importance of insurance. But so what do you do at Allstate to help these communities to become more resilient?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's something I've been working on climate change for 30 years.
Wow.
And not so much the genesis. Like I said, I don't need to get in a fight over whether this is coal-fired plants or something else. All I know is the weather's warmer, and when the weather's warmer, there's more rain, storms are more severe, so we need to just focus on resiliency and remediation. So for 30 years, we've been focused on that. And it kind of goes at levels, right? Like at the very customer level, you try to tell people, hey, if you have bushes right next to your house and a wildfire comes, your house is going to burn down. And then you can go up there a level and work with the local people and say, do you have enough firefighting equipment? You can say, do you have good evacuation plans? And you can go above that and say to the state, like, what are you doing to make sure that there's adequate coverage here? Because at some point, the risk of loss is so high but so remote that the capital markets don't really provide a good answer. So if it's a 1 in 1,000 event, then nobody wants to pay for 1 in 1,000 event. But, oh, by the way, since I've been CEO, which is my 19th year, I don't know how many 1 in 100-year events, but it's more than 1/10, all right? It might be 50.
I'm sure that, exactly.
I know, it's a lot. So you're like, okay, well, that math doesn't work. And so we work with the states to try to create ways in which they can do it. And we've tried to work at the federal government, but it hasn't really worked. The federal government spends a lot of money a year on it, like about $25 billion a year. Some of it's really well spent, some of it's not that well spent. And so trying to get the federal government organized has been really hard. We've made a lot of progress on the other ones, but it's really about helping people figure out that everybody wants to ignore that it's going to happen. And our job is to look longer term and just take the hit. So like in 2007 in California, we stopped taking on new customers because I said, this is crazy. People got stuff around the house. And then we said, you know what, if you have bushes really close to your house, we're not going to do it. But if they're more than 100 feet away, we'll insure you. And people got really mad at us. So then 2018, I'm in the Paradise Fire. After the Paradise Fire, I'm with a fire marshal going through the zone, and there's a big X on the house. And I said, what's the X for? And he said, well, that's if there's bushes close to the house, we put an X there because I don't want the firefighters to stop because they put their life at risk. The house is going to burn down anyway. People were mad at us because we told them this was going to happen. I'm not saying we're prescient or anything like that. It's not really that complicated. But here, so I think trying to help people, and so I'm happy about is people now seem more focused on it.
So it's very interesting because you're saying people like you worked with the government but community. So how do you have something in which you help more individuals to get prepared?
Yeah, we support, we'll help you figure out what your evacuation plan is. We give you discounts if you have like hurricane shutters on and you live in a hurricane zone. We age rate your roof so that if your roof is 20 years old, then you pay more for insurance than if your roof is 5 years old. Some people think, oh, well, that's just Allstate doesn't want losses. I mean, yeah, that's part of it, obviously, but the other part is we get paid to fairly spread costs across society. That's what we do. And if we do that right, we keep 5 to 10 cents a dollar. If we don't do it right, our money goes away. So when you're spreading costs, if you have a 20-year-old roof and your neighbor has a 5-year-old roof and there's a hailstorm, you're going to have more damage, so you should pay more than your neighbor. So we try to help people see that, and we try to give them economic signals to help them understand it. It's worked for us.
No, I get the fact that also sometimes people just are not even aware of what are the risk.
Yeah,
factors,
people
so
just don't know.
Them, yes.
Yeah.
So and talking about in terms of returns, right? That there is a lot of discussion as how a company in general can quantify, the climate change risk versus not. You as a insurance company, surely you thought about what are the financial cost or opportunities of a low carbon emission. Or whatever is.
So in severe weather, I'm proud of the fact, I guess, that we have a really industry-leading homeowners business. We make more money than everybody else, and we're there for 7.5 million customers. But then you're like, okay, well, maybe you got it wrong on climate. Maybe there's going to be a whole bunch more storms, and you're just waiting to go bankrupt. And so when you look underneath the increase in losses and catastrophes, it's kind of interesting that only about 20% is because the weather is more severe. That's what the media wants to blame it on. But the other 80% is largely due to the fact that we're building houses in the wrong places.
Interesting.
And we're building bigger houses. So what used to be $1 billion is now $2 billion because you got a lot of houses that are right next to the fire zone or on the coast or something like that. Those last two things you can do with math. Like I can figure out. We do geocoding by house, by roof type, down to the house. So we can figure out those last two things well. The 20% we're rolling the dice on, but that's why we get to make money.
I like that. Now, I see a lot of questions coming in about AI, but before I get to those questions, let me ask you, because I know, I just want to ask you my question, and then we'll get to there. And then I want to ask you a question.
I mean, whatever. You can come into the classroom and say, you're out,
you're out, exactly. So no, but I know you've been a big proponent, right, of using technology as a way to reinvent business, common goal of business leaders, but not everybody has done it, right? And you as an insurance provider, you really sit on a lot of data. I mean, that's the strength, if you want, of insurance company. You have a lot of data, a lot of insights that you could use. So how can you use technology and innovation to think of the future, to think of progress, and think of the successes?
Well, I think I'll start really high. So this is about 14 years ago. I was trying to hire a guy who still works for us as our CIO, and we're at dinner, and I quipped this statement. I was trying to figure out how I got him, wooed to us. And I said, look, I want a technology-driven strategy, not a strategy supported by technology. I didn't even really know what I meant when I said it. But really, think of a technology-driven strategy. I'm going to take technology, I'm going to see what it can do for my customers, see what it can do for my business model, and I'm going to build a strategy around that. And so it's really about creating the future, not following trends. A strategy supported by technology is, well, I got this strategy, give me some software that helps me do what we want. So he took that, developed it. We've worked collectively as a team, really, to sort of how do you have a technology-driven strategy? And so I think, you know, when you look at the market, people talk about technology companies. I'm like, well, really, every company today is a technology company that I know of.
Yeah.
Like, some use technology just in their space. Other people sell technology across industries. But really, every company is a technology company. So I think it does have to get embedded into what you do. And so what we try to do is leverage it in a way that makes it better for our customers, be focused on that. We invest in stuff. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So we've been investing in telematics for, I don't know, probably 10, 11 years. Probably, I don't know, $1 billion in. And we track 40 million. We provide crash detection for 40 million customers every 15 seconds in America. Not necessarily what you think of as an insurance company. So we're trying to swim upstream rather than just your car gets wrecked, we'll fix it, to, hey, we'll help you protect your stuff in your family. Other stuff is farther out, like we just joined, we're working on quantum computing. I don't really know what that can do for us. All I know is it's going to be different. And so as a technology-driven strategy, you got to both figure out how to use what you can that works today and then invest in some stuff that could just be a complete waste of money. But, you know, like, it wouldn't be the first thing we wasted money on.
I love that, quantum computing. So everybody here, we heard it first time, exactly, about the future. Now, let me ask one couple of questions here. One is, how disruptive do you think Gen AI will become in the next 12 months for corporate America? What is your advice to ensure long-term career success? And finally, how do you envision the role AI will play in claims handling? So a little bit of everything. Yes.
Yeah. That's a comprehensive question. First, how disruptive? I think it's going to it's going to enable us to dramatically improve the customer experience. And I'll give you an example. I don't know, just like maybe it's a year ago. And we're big into AI. We have a partnership with Microsoft. We're on the inside working on some stuff. And about maybe it was 6-9 months ago, I get a customer email, and it's complaining about what this claim person said. So I'll try to do top and bottom.
Yes.
And I read the email, and I think, yeah, this is a terrible email. And so I send it to the head of the property liability business, our technology person. I'm like, you know, can't like AI like rewrite this stuff or something? Like, this is a terrible email. So the technology person, he takes it and he puts it through Copilot, which is a Microsoft product. And this is literally in 15 minutes. And he comes back and it's like very nice. You know, I had a nice conversation with your wife. As I said to her, I was like, wow, this is a great. You look at the one that our claim adjuster did, they were probably in a car going from place to place, dictating it, and it's like bullet point sentences. It was terrible. So Copilot writes so much. So we decide, every claim adjuster doing an email to person, it's going to go through Copilot, and we don't ask you. You know, like a lot of times it says you want. We don't ask. It just does it. So what I would call that's really augmented intelligence. So that's different than artificial intelligence. So I think augmented intelligence is coming fast and going to help us do a better job for our customers. It still uses large language models. I think artificial intelligence with the new DeepSeek stuff and the ability to create individual component large language models that do their own work in the proprietary. So I don't have to use ChatGPT, which has got all this information from all these different people, 99% of which has nothing to do with what we're interested in. We can now create our own large language model. And I think that is going to make artificial intelligence enable us to really change jobs. I think we will probably employ fewer people, back to the question about employment. And so what we're trying to figure out is, okay, if your skill doesn't matter that much, what are the skills that matter? So adaptability, learning quotient, critical thinking. And so I would say one of the things I try to tell our employees is, the best defense is a good offense. So build the skills and capabilities around this critical thinking stuff. Build it around adaptability. So as we're looking at our skill-based model where we do that, we're trying to help people build those skills. The last thing I would say on that is I think companies, and all companies could do this, I didn't come up with this idea, but this would be about 5 or 6 years, maybe it's 10 years ago, I said, I want anybody to be able to apply for any job in the company. And I don't want their boss to know, and they can interview for and take the job so you can internally quit. I'd rather have you internally quit than next. So, and I kind of lived in always I know the managers are going to say, I need to help this person. No. If you're a bad boss, they quit on you. What our team came up with is something even better. They took that structure and they put on top of that, our recruiters now work with our skill-based stuff that's on adaptability and stuff, and they proactively call out to people in the company and say, hey, we got this job opening. I've got it posted on Indeed or something like that, but you look like you fit this job. Are you interested?
Interesting.
So I feel like that's like building that employee value proposition. So even if AI changes their jobs, we're working to try to help them figure out how do they fit into this new world.
That's very, very interesting. So is there other things you're experimented, something you experimented and abandoned?
Yeah, there's plenty of stuff we have experimented on and abandoned. Right now we're working on creating something we call Alley, which I want to personify it.
I love that.
Because
yes.
So it's Allstate Large Language Intelligent Ecosystem. So Alley, but you can think of it like Alley is going to do some work for us. And it's going to connect a bunch of this stuff. So back to silos. One of the things with silos is it's just a communication problem. You're busy, you got stuff going on. You don't know somebody over here in claims is doing something, and the person in product says, well, we have to change the stuff this way because we're losing too much money. And, in theory, they should be able to call the claim people and say what's going on here, but they're busy, and they do it. So I think something like Alley will create better connection between the silos. I'm not sure what it has to do, but I think it's coming. Now, I would just, in terms of Surgeon General warning, I've been on this for a while. So in 2019, I wrote an op-ed, Save Capitalism by Paying People More. And one of my concepts there was that just raising the minimum wage doesn't work. Because paying somebody $15 for a 12-hour job, that's not a way to future. Create a $20 job. That's kind of interesting. How do you create a $25 an hour job? So I think you can use AI to create more valuable jobs, pay people more money, and then in total we'll be better off. But that was 5 years ago, and we're still. We pay people more, but we're not there yet.
Well, that is a continuous improvement progress. I see a lot of questions also coming in specifically to the insurance. Let me read a couple. Auto insurance is often viewed as a commodity. What do you feel differentiates Allstate from the other big players like Geico, Progressive, State Farm?
Okay. I'm always like commodities and having some marketing background. You're like, okay, are bananas a commodity? Yeah, except if you see Chiquita, I'd assume they're still
yes,
exactly.
You're
like,
I know Chiquita.
Water's a commodity, right? Yet you buy the bottle of water because it's Spring Health or Fiji or whatever it is. So I feel like there's a way to take what is common and similar, but make it differentiated enough so that people are prepared to pay you something for it or are more loyal to you, even if it's the same price. So we're working on in the auto insurance business, it's affordable, simple, and connected. Affordable is cheap, so we're working on being lowest cost. Simple is, it's not really that simple.
I'm sure
it's kind of complicated. I call it remember wax and they had in Italy, lemon pledge, the ad,
Yes.
built up wax. Over time, our product had built up wax. And I'm like, we need to pull out the lemon pledge and get rid of stuff. So, and so we've tried to simplify our product so people understand it. The connected piece we're still working on. So, so it's crash detection. If you get Allstate Insurance, it's crash. If you get Allstate Insurance, one thing I'd like us to do is on teen driving. So there's an app called Life 360, which has got 40 million people in the United States on it. We provide crash detection to all those people. I'm like, why do people use Life 360? Because they have teenagers. And they want to know where their teenagers are, and they want to know how they're driving. I'm like, hey, we could do that. Why don't we do that for them? So while it's a commodity, if your car gets bashed, we fix it. Okay, that's a commodity service kind of. So I think it's about thinking in thinking broadly about what you're doing. So we're thinking about connectivity. I'm not thinking about connectivity on insurance, like maybe electronic bill or something like that. I'm like, what's connectivity about the role of driving in your life? I don't know, but we're trying to work on connectivity.
I love that. And as a mother of a teenager who are right now taking driving lessons, I'm all for
Life 360. You need to get Life 360.
Absolutely.
Your teenager won't
I'm
like
sold.
it, but when you say, hey, I saw you were going 80. We had one person, so in telematics, she calls us and she's like, your system doesn't work. You're charging me for driving over 80 miles an hour, and I never drive over 80 miles an hour. And we're like, okay, well, let us look. Sorry if we made a problem. It turns out her son was taking her car at 2 a.m. driving. She didn't know it. And you're like, that's kind of interesting. So that's connectivity.
Definitely connectivity. Here, there's also another question following up on something you said. Similar to the direct repair program in the auto collision space, do you envision something similar on the property side? I believe the DRP has made the auto space far more efficient, and I wonder if something similar could help solve issues you mentioned for property insurance.
Yeah, so it's a good question. Somebody obviously knows something about insurance. So a direct repair program is your car gets wrecked, and we have 3,000 body shops that we have a trust-based relationship with, where you can take your car there, they fix it, it's faster, they give us better service, and we don't get back and forth on every fastener on the thing, and we'll guarantee your car after that. That works pretty well. In homes, it's a little more complicated. I'd like to think there was a way to do it. We've tried it a couple times. The problem is the structure of the repair services in homes is much more fragmented than in cars. So cars, with 3,000, we can get to most of the country. If we took 3,000 home people, there's a cabinet person, there's a small developer, builder, there's a big builder, there's a painter, and so trying to stitch those all together. So we've tried it before. I think we should go back at it, and we have some national relationships with some people on certain parts of it. So if your house gets flooded, we have a national relationship with a carrier who will come in, get the water out, put the dehumidifiers in. So we don't have to figure out who in some little city in Iowa is that person. So we have some national relationships, but to do it over the whole house is a little more complicated. There are some people trying to consolidate that industry. Some PE people are trying to do it. And if they get it done, we'd be good customers for them.
Very interesting. Now, I want to come back also, Ben, on the purpose and things like that. You've embarked on a mission to build trust within communities. Why do you want to work on this as a company?
First, just set
yes,
trust
exactly.
Trust in America has gone down. You can look at Pew, you can look at Edelman, whether it's trust in the government, trust in leaders, trust in businesses. Businesses actually have been better than some others.
That's why,
Yeah, and it's because we deliver stuff and people know us. You're close, so you trust people closer. But in total, it's come down. Allstate sells trust. You give us money, and you trust that when something happens, we're going to be there. So declining trust is bad for us in terms of people valuing our product, trusting us. So there's two parts to it. So one is like it's bad for our business, but also like part of our shared purpose is improving our communities, and trust has the potential to derail a whole bunch of stuff. Capitalism, civics, democracy, go down the list. And so we looked at it, we said, this is like not headed in the right direction. It's really complicated, but we decided to weigh in and do it. And working with the Aspen Institute for 3 years to come up with programs that we think can be scalable. I've learned a lot about trust in doing that. One of the things interesting from a marketing standpoint, one of the things we want to do to get trust up is both amplify and celebrate acts of trust. But now we are way too negative in America today. I actually think we're addicted to negativity. And when you get addicted to something, it changes the way your brain thinks. And you're like, why would you say that? And I'm like, well, so we have people who track us, how many nice things to say about Allstate, how many neutral, how many negative. And I get a report every month. And I said, hey, could you do that for all the communication in America? Just social media, TV, everything. And of course, you expect more negative than positive.
Yeah.
Not a surprise. But I'm like, well, how much is that worth? Like, suppose that was an ad program. I'm doing my, how many, how many hits are there on it? And the net negativity, negative minus positive, is a bigger advertising program than the top 15 advertisers in America on an annual basis. Verizon, P&G, Unilever, Allstate, Progressive, going down the list. Take the top 15 advertisers. It's an $84 billion campaign of us against us. And we're all part of it. I'm not blaming, NBC or anybody else or social media or anything. Like, we're all part of it. So one of the things we're trying to figure out is how do we help people amplify the good and amplify that trust in ourselves. The other part is we got to do more work in communities.
That is so important. I love that. And I want to, I'm getting so many questions. Let me ask you this one, because it's about Kellogg. So what was your biggest learning from your Kellogg education that has helped you lead Allstate so effectively?
Two things I think I would say. One is working with teams. So, when you're young, and even I would say early in my career, you're an individual contributor. You're doing your work. In my current role, there are probably some people who think I do nothing most days, but I'm like managing teams, keeping people aligned, thinking about them. So I would say, I think the other part is a broad perspective. And I think this is important if you're leading an organization, but I also think it's important if you're leading a function in an organization. Which is to have Kellogg, for me, help me think about, no marketing, no finance, no strategy, no operations. So I came away thinking, there's a lot of different angles to this stuff. And so thinking about all those different angles, it was something I hadn't thought about before I got here. I think maybe early in my career, I didn't even really think that much about when I left. But now I'm like, that's really the whole thing, figure out how the team works together and try to understand the whole landscape and how you fit into the landscape.
I love that. I have to quote you about why people should come to Kellogg.
Okay,
I love that.
Feel free.
Now, this one, let me enter. I think it says, the way I understand is when you have the purpose of the company, going back to the purpose, being generic, too generic versus too specific, in what way being generic would help compared to working for another company? So how much does it help you to have a very specific purpose versus a very generic purpose?
Well, I think it has to be, rather than saying generic, I might say macro. I think it has to be macro at the top, but then you have to build out the specifics as you go underneath it. So what would be an example? So one of the things we say that could be generic, which is one of the things we do as part of our purpose, provide opportunity for our employees. Okay, that sounds pretty good. What's that mean? So we just actually recently redid our employee value proposition because we said we're going to be clear about it. So what does opportunity for employee means? One of the things we said, we're going to help you achieve your personal purpose. We're going to help you be part of a purpose trip. So it's purpose is one. Rewards is another one. And we're like, okay, what are rewards? Rewards is both recognition and it's money, right? Like that's why you're working here. But we put in individuality. And the reason we put in individuality is we're trying to sort through how do you respect the flexibility that people have now come to expect by working remotely, yet still balance the need for a company to collaborate. So by being specific on individuality, now we said, well, what does individuality mean? It means we're going to respect you for your differences, which is part of inclusive diversity, which is one of our values. But it also means that we're going to recognize your individual stuff, but it gets balanced with what your team requirements are and the enterprise requirements are. And the truth is, you can't work at home remotely all the time. The truth is, you don't have to come in 5 days a week, because driving to an office for an hour and 45 minutes, something to do a Zoom call is a waste of your time. So what we've done is we use that individuality to be specific with people about what they want to do. And then we said in greater specificity, okay, sit down with your team and figure out what work do we do that has to be together.
Yes.
And what work do we do? I don't really need to come in to do a new spreadsheet. And we said, so build your time together around the work you need to do together, and whether that's developing talent, coming up with creative problem solutions. So I think you have to be generic, you have to keep or macro, and then just keep working it down to the specifics.
I love when you hear about that. I love the vision, I have to say. That's very, I don't want to take all the blame, all the merit as Kellogg, but it's lovely to hear Kellogg along with so much thought and vision. Now, this is a different angle. I'm getting so many questions. Do you see, I already apologize, I don't think I'll be able to get all the questions, but do you see the insurer's role expanding beyond offering cyber policies to becoming an active cyber resilience partner for individual and businesses?
Yes, yeah. We sell identity protection to 2.5 million households, probably cover 4 million people. We sell it through the worksite. It's basically, most of it is if it's broke, we fix it. And if you don't have it, whether you buy it from us or somebody else, you should have it. Like I had someone hack me, and I spent 7 hours with the person on the phone calling all these banks, because the banks won't just let someone else do it. And they're like, hey, here's how you say this. So it's very helpful in remediation. That said, it doesn't happen to that many people. So we do something now to say, here's your risk profile. I think we need to swim more upstream and take elderly people. They're all getting scammed these days.
Yes.
And then the AI is so good, it can show you a picture. They could get on a computer, and it could be like your grandson, a picture of your grandson, which they could get off a Facebook page, saying, hey, I need $50. And then the person gives them $50. So I think people are at risk. And if people are at risk, we should find a way to help them. If we can help them avoid the risk, that's better than helping them fix the loss. It's cheaper and better for everybody. That said, I don't think that's the easy one to do. We're working on some products to do it, but I think it's a really good idea.
It's a new world,
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. One more, and we're getting very quick to the end. How do you manage communication in an increasingly polarized society?
Carefully, but honestly. And so I try to recognize that everybody's got a view. In my view, I have my own view, but that doesn't make my view the company's view, and it doesn't make my view right. So if people choose to vote for one person or choose to have a view of global trade or whatever, I'm like, okay, you got a view of what you think global trade is. I got my view. So I first try to understand and empathize with why would they think that. And even if I can't come to a conclusion, because I can't get it past my own biases, I say, okay, well, I need to recognize that in the way I do it. On the other hand, I think that if you do that too much, you say blah, blah, and you say nothing. So I'll give you an example that initially didn't work out that great. In the end, I would do it all over again. So we have the Sugar Bowl happens. We sponsor the Sugar Bowl, have for 19 years. You do a commercial at the beginning, and it's a sponsor message. And you try to make it as close to a commercial as you can because, you know, you're trying to get people to buy some insurance. After the people got killed in New Orleans this year, I had to get on and make a statement about it. And I made a statement that it was terrible for the victims. You know, we stood by the city of New Orleans. We've been there forever, you know, and we're going to help everybody out as much as we can. I said, but, you know, the other thing is, like, we're just too negative in the world right now, and we all want to hate each other. I got a lot of pushback on that second piece. But I'm like, you know, 16 million people were going to watch it. I feel like it's true. Maybe it's wrong. So I think you have to be empathetic, recognize where people are, but then if you have a chance, you have a responsibility to be an upstander and speak, as opposed to say something blah blah that nobody cares about.
I love that. And because you're getting there, I just want to get a question, which is kind of continuation of this also, but going back to Kellogg, right? You have, you know, you were recently here, so great to see you at a reunion with your classmates. How have your classmates, other grads of Kellogg, have they been a source of advice, of insights, as you know, as a leader with such visibility, how you navigate difficult choice and the present world? Have they been a support and advice, a source of support and advice?
Yes, but I would say it's on me. It could have been better. How about that? So I would say, look, if you haven't gone to a reunion, you need to come and go to a reunion.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
It's like, you know, people you didn't even know, and you connect with them, and that you get different perspectives. And so I come every 5 years, and you know, like, but I didn't for a long period of time. I don't know why I didn't.
Well, we're very happy to have you back.
And then you learn stuff by being around the campus, the other stuff. But I would say that. In my career, one of the things I found very helpful to me is finding other people to support me. I don't mean advocates, but people I could call and ask for questions, which means being vulnerable, which means being open to their advice and letting them know, like, hey, thank you. And I feel like I have some good friends from Northwestern who do that for me. I have some another group. I belong to something called YPO. I used to be a young president. Now my kids say I'm OPO, Old President's Organization. I have found that group. I meet with them every month. It's completely safe. 9 other people. I can talk about whatever I want to talk about, and they don't repeat it to other people. So I feel like I could have done a better job and can do a better job being involved with Kellogg and the alums to build that out. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but there are a couple of people that I saw again this weekend that I will now put on my short list of, like, I just need to reach out to them and see what's going on and be open and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think? And so I would say from a career standpoint, my success is you know, I work hard and I've been lucky and all that kind of stuff, but a lot of it is other people helping me.
I love that. And I would like to include on that, Lord, because also I think it's also up on us to bring you all back, to facilitate that network and that connection. That's a full circle we are trying to facilitate as much as possible. So
yeah. And
it's
this
a great
thing is one of
to
those
do.
things, right?
That's exactly.
Yeah.
It's like how we do that. So that's fantastic. And I mean, Tom, this has been such an amazing discussion, going from small details about insurance that now I learned to the big vision about purpose in a large organization. You had an incredible career, and I think everybody here can see why. And I'm taking all the merit as Kellogg. But
it's fine. Like, no. You know, lots of people.
Thank you for being such an amazing, you know, representative, and thank you for coming here today.
Well, I love Kellogg, and you got to just keep adding value. You keep churning out those students, and you'll keep making the world better.
I hope so. Thank you. And everybody today, I hope you really enjoyed this amazing conversation, and see you next time. Thank you for joining. Bye.